The chair had dissent in both directions. President Trump's appointee, Stephen Murrin, voted to cut rates by 0.5 percentage point. That's the same as he said last meeting. Two others, though, voted in the opposite direction. Austin Goolsbee and Jeffrey Schmidt both wanted to hold the rates steady, suggesting they are much more concerned about higher inflation. Loretta Mester is the former president of the Cleveland Fed. With me now. Loretta, good to see you, ma'am. I'm very grateful. Thank you. I always find it wise to start these interviews on these occasions. How would you have voted today?
I probably would have dissented because I think that I'm a little more concerned about the inflation outlook than Chair Powell intimated in his press conference. And not that it's moving necessarily up, but it isn't moving down, and it's still what I consider well above the goal. So I probably would thought they didn't need to take another rate cut today against the weakening or the softening in the labor market.
The economic picture is extremely complicated. And if you listen, as we listened to the Fed, he made that clear, because it's not that often that you do get the mandates, the dual mandate in such competing positions, where you really, it's a toss of a coin in a sense at any given moment. So as we look to next year, it's wait and see.
Well, I think they are in a very challenging position because, as you point out, they want to hit both parts of the mandate, and yet the things going on in the economy are moving them in the wrong direction. There's upside inflation risk, downside employment risk. I think one thing to keep in mind is that the softening in the labor market, a lot of it is driven by what's happening on the supply side of the labor market, and monetary policy really isn't a tool that can address that. Immigration has really reduced the labor supply, and people are not joining the labor market at the same pace. So even though firms aren't hiring a lot of workers, they're not firing a lot of workers either. And cutting the interest rate isn't really going to change that much. So again, I think the Fed is right to not have built in a lot of interest rate cuts next year, because they want to see how the economy evolves. That said, you can make a case for further cuts if you think that inflation is on this downward path to 2%, except for tariffs. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but if we start to see that in the data, then they'll have a stronger case for, okay, now we can start thinking about another rate cut to get maybe more towards neutral.
2% is as far away at the moment as it's ever been, in the sense that with the one big beautiful bill, the deficit and everything else, and the money that's sloshing around, it will be very difficult in anything like short to medium term to do that. And that makes what happens next crucial. And I'm talking now about the next leader of the Fed, whether it's Kevin Hassett and all the problems that go there, or whoever else it might be. That's going to be crucial.
Well, I don't disagree. I think that the economy has proven itself to be very resilient this year. And remember, at the beginning of the year, some people thought we'd be in a recession. And next year, there's these tailwinds from fiscal policy. People are going to get bigger refunds than they thought they were going to get. We have deregulation happening. We have, full depreciation. So investment is going to be strong. So the economy is going to be strong. So it would be not a good idea, I think, in my view, to do further rate cuts. But I viewed the press conference and heard Chair Powell. He was careful not to really tip his hand one way or the other. He viewed policies in a good place now, but if he sees further weakening in the labor market, I think they will respond to that. I don't think that's necessarily the appropriate thing to do, because I don't think a further rate cut is going to solve the supply side of the labor market. But I did not read that as being that's off the table.
Do you have a preferred replacement in your mind for Chair Powell? I'll give the names, of course. You've got Kevin Hassett, Kevin Walsh, Christopher Waller, Michelle Bowman, Rick Ryder, and there's always the dark horses as well. Do you have a preferred person that you think would do a good job?
I think the key is to get somebody who is really going to use what the incoming economic data is to inform their outlook and really the mission of the Fed driving policy decisions. You really need someone who isn't going to let political consideration affect their view of monetary policy. And so that takes a strong person, it takes a strong leader, and it takes someone who can lay out a cogent economic argument, right, or a case for whatever policy recommendation they're making. And different people have that skill set. And then to be able to communicate that not only to internally to their colleagues on the FOMC, but also externally to market participants and also the general public. So it's a hard job. It takes a real leader. But I think crucially, given the environment we're in now, it's got to be someone who is going to stand up for the independence of monetary policy making and not succumb to political pressure.
I read an article this week. You may have seen it, Mohammed El-Arian's article in the Financial Times, where he talked about the wider issue for the Fed. Yeah, we all get terribly excited by interest rates, but the credibility and the role of the Fed in the future. The next chair is going to have a crucial task, if you will, charting the Fed's course for the next 20 years.
Well, I think the Fed should do that kind of work itself. It should self-reflect what went wrong with its policy. And I was on that committee, so I can say our policy during the pandemic. What did we miss? You know, what could we have done better to avoid the strongest increases in inflation that we saw? I don't think there was a way to mitigate that increase given what was driving it, but we could have reacted sooner and maybe not have inflation rise that quickly or that high, or maybe get it down more quickly. So there's a lot of things that the Fed, I think, should be, self-reflecting on, and, you learn by doing. And I think the Fed would be wise to take some accountability for some of those issues and think about better ways of doing their job, partly focusing in on the dual mandate goals, making sure they have those first in mind whenever they're setting policy, making sure they have an implementation program that will actually implement policy in the best way to make it most effective. So again, the Fed should be doing that work.
We lost the last few sentences from you, but thank you for joining us. I'm grateful to you, and we certainly got just what you're saying. Good to see you. Thank you.